All right, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the homeopathic remedy Dulcamara. Now, it's part of the Solanaceae family. You probably know them as the nightshades, and believe me, its story is absolutely fascinating. You know, the entire story of this remedy is basically hiding in plain sight, right in its name, Dulcamara. It comes from two Latin words, dulcis, which means sweet, and amara, which means bitter. Sweet and bitter. And that's not just a cool name. It's the central theme we're going to be exploring. So, what's really hiding behind this sweet and bitter idea? Well, this paradox is everything. It's the master key that unlocks the entire patient profile for Dulcamara, from their personality right down to their physical symptoms. So yeah, let's dive in. Okay, so we're going to start with the most dramatic part of the Dulcamara personality, this really profound internal split. Seriously, think of it like a classic Jekyll and Hyde story, where you have two totally different selves just at war inside one person. So on the outside, in public, the Dulcamara person is, well, they're the one everyone loves. They seem so helpful, so logical, like they've got it all figured out. But then behind closed doors, in private, a much darker, more controlling, and really emotionally volatile side comes out. A classic example is how they can be this amazing, perfect teacher or parent with other people's kids, but then find it incredibly hard to manage their own. And this right here, this is a real-life story that just perfectly captures this whole conflict. It's about a kindergarten teacher who was absolutely adored by students, by parents, by everyone. But then it was discovered that she was secretly mistreating her own pet. It's just such a stark, heartbreaking example of that sweet public image hiding a really bitter, secret reality. And you see this duality play out in their day-to-day life too. It's this wild contrast between day and night. During the day, it's all about rigid control, the perfect diet, super disciplined routines. They're the person who gives everyone else fantastic advice. But at night, all that control just shatters. This is when you might see things like attacks of bulimia or substance abuse. They're completely unable to follow the very same advice they give out so freely. It's a theme that's actually pretty common to the whole nightshade family. Okay, so you have to wonder, right? Where does a split like this even come from? What creates this immense pressure to keep up a perfect facade? Well, the answer usually goes way back to a very specific kind of childhood. The root cause is an upbringing that looked perfect from the outside. You know, there was always a safe home, they were financially stable, had good food, a good education. All the boxes were checked. But what was completely missing was emotional nourishment, real warmth, empathy, genuine connection. It was a sterile, almost plastic environment. And growing up like that leaves them with these two just crippling fears. First, they are terrified of becoming just like their parents, pragmatic but emotionally empty. And second, they live with this constant terror that their dark side, this part of them they feel they inherited, is going to be exposed and shatter that perfect image they've worked so hard to build. Now, this internal, emotional coldness we've been talking about, it doesn't just stay in the mind. Nope, it actually starts to show up physically in very specific ways. So let's take a look at how this deep psychological suppression kind of finds a voice in the body. And this is brilliant, actually. This little fact from botany is the perfect metaphor for the patient's physical state. In nature, the Dulcamara plant literally becomes more toxic when it's in a damp environment, and it's the exact same for the patient. Their symptoms flare up when they're exposed to cold and dampness. So let's break down the mechanism. The trigger, it's almost always a sudden shift from warm to cold and damp. Think about a hot summer day that turns into a cold, humid night, or maybe just getting your feet wet in a cold puddle. This exposure suppresses the body's normal way of releasing things, like sweating, and boom, as a result, physical symptoms just erupt. And these symptoms can pop up all over. But what's really interesting is the theme here. It's all about suppression and things being hidden, just like their emotions. On the skin, you'll see things like warts or really intense itching, but often in hidden areas, under their clothes. In the mucous membranes, it shows up as congestion, colds, asthma, sinusitis, as if everything is blocked up. And in the joints, it can be this intense pain and stiffness, especially after getting cold.
Okay, to really get a handle on Dulcamara, it helps to kind of zoom out and see where it fits in its family tree, the Solanaceae. Let's put it side by side with two of its famous relatives, belladonna and capsicum.
Yeah, this chart really puts it all into perspective. You've got belladonna, which is all about being acute and explosive, right? Then there's capsicum, kind of in the middle, in a subacute state. But Dulcamara, see how it's the most chronic of the three? Its nature is psychotic, which in homeopathy means conditions that are hidden, suppressed. So instead of the delirium and panic of belladonna, the Dulcamara reaction is rigid and moralistic, with everything kept under lock and key. So at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway? If you remember nothing else, remember this. Dulcamara is this combination of a sweet and bitter personality that comes from deep emotional suppression, a really rigid outer facade, and physical symptoms that are reliably, consistently, and predictably triggered by getting cold and wet. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on, doesn't it? Understanding this pattern isn't just about homeopathy. It's really a lens for seeing the hidden pressures that can shape the people around us. It makes you wonder, how many sweet facades do we see every day that might be hiding a bitter reality, just waiting for that cold, damp day to bring it all to the surface?